Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is let. Now, normally I use this verb as I shift my notes and share with you some of the definitions. So let's take a look at how you might hear this verb used. The first way you might hear let used is to mean to allow someone to do something, right? So you might hear parents say things like, we don't let our kids watch a particular show or style of movie or something like that. Or we don't let them have more than an hour of screen time, right? We might also hear kids say things like, my parents don't let me, right? So it's meaning they don't allow something here. So allowing, another way to think about that might be to forbid or prevent someone from doing something. A second and common way to use the verb let is to use it in an imperative form. So giving a command. And I tend to do this in each of the videos I've made now. I've imagine I've used it at least 400 times now. So I might be using it sometimes to make a polite offer. If I have someone visiting my home, I might say, let me get you something to drink, right? Another way you might hear it used is kind of to express defiance. So let me give you a situation for this. Again, here I am using that imperative to introduce an example. But to express defiance might be you have a child who's absolutely insistent they're going to do something a particular way. You know what? You go, let him, right? So that would connect to that defiance. Now, in British English, you might hear the verb let used to mean to rent someone a room or rent them some particular space. It's really not common to hear that in American English, but I never know where some of my viewers are studying, so I figure it's good to go through some of the common options. You should know that let is an irregular verb. To make the progressive form, I need to double the ending T because I have a consonant vowel consonant one syllable verb here before I add ing. We're going to pronounce that progressive form letting, letting. Okay? Now, in the past tense and participle forms, we aren't going to make any spelling changes, and our pronunciation is going to stay the same as well. So the past tense form of let is let, and the participle form of this verb is also let. Now our verb let gets used as part of phrasal verbs in a number of different ways. So the majority of this video is now going to focus on different phrasal verbs you might hear or see with let. And the first one we're going to look at is to let by. This might mean you're allowing someone to pass by or pass around something. An example of this might be, let me by while I'm carrying these heavy boxes. This is another imperative or command, right? Sort of saying kind of make way. I need to get through, right? I have these heavy boxes I'm carrying. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to let down. This can have a couple different meanings. One would be to disappoint. So you might also kind of hear this used in a negative imperative form, right? Where we're giving someone a command, don't let me down, right? So maybe you're expecting someone to perform at a very high level so that you're not disappointed. A second way you'll hear let down used is to mean to sort of lower the amount of effort, attention, or focus. So, an example of this might be, you can't let your guard down while being the lookout. Okay, so here we're telling someone maybe that it's not acceptable, it's not permissible to lower the amount of focus, right, while you're watching or being the lookout. Another phrasal verb you might hear is let in. This can have a number of different meanings. One common one would be to allow someone to enter a place. So, an example here. Will you let me in? Right? You might imagine, right? Maybe you've been knocking on the door for a while, and your spouse or your children aren't allowing you to enter. So you might ask this question. This is a simple future example here. A second way to use let in is to mean to allow someone to join a group or maybe to become a member of some organization. An example of this. How many new members did the sorority let in? Sorority, a Greek organization at many colleges and universities, and they sort of allow certain people to join the particular group. So here is a simple past tense question, a more information question. We want to know the number. A third way to use let in is to mean to be emotionally available or even to be vulnerable, right? So you're letting someone else understand your thoughts and your feelings. So an example of how you might hear this used might be in a sort of a conflict, right? So a couple's arguing and one says to another, "You never let me in," right? So you're not expressing your emotions. I can't understand what you're feeling in this situation. So, this would be an example of the simple present. We're maybe talking about a routine or habit that a particular person has. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to let in on. This generally means someone is sharing a secret. So, an example of this: I won't let anyone in on our plans, right? So, whatever plans we have, right, it's going to stay a secret. So, I won't let anyone in on is an example where really someone's making a promise. So, we've got simple future here, it's negative. So, I'm not going to share that secret. Let's take a look at some more phrasal verbs. The next one is let off. This can have a couple different meanings. One would be to not punish someone. So, an example of this: the officer let the speeding motorist off with just a warning. This is likely an example of a simple past tense. We don't have an exact time. Was it yesterday or last week, last month? But that maybe is understood as part of a story that someone is telling. A second way you might hear let off used is to mean to give someone a break or give them some time off. An example of this: my boss is letting me off for a few days this week. Okay, so this is, again, suggesting someone doesn't have to work. Okay? My boss is letting me off is an example of the present progressive or the present continuous, right? So we're talking about something that is in progress or an action that is happening over the course of this week. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is let on. This means that someone is revealing or maybe disclosing something. An example of this: don't let on about this weekend's surprise party. Don't share, don't tell others about this, right? Because we want it to be a surprise. Don't let on about this surprise party is another negative imperative. So we're giving someone a command. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is let out. This can have a few different meanings. One would be to allow someone to leave or go outside. An example here: was she let out for good behavior? Maybe we're talking about someone who was in prison or in jail or in some type of kind of confined area, but then allowed to leave. A second way you might hear let out used is to mean to make a sound. An example here: she let out a sigh when he began to repeat himself yet again. Maybe you've been in this situation. Someone starts telling the same story again. Right? That would be letting out a sigh. A third way we can use let out is to mean to make clothes either longer or bigger. An example of this. After the pandemic, I let out a few pairs of pants. I think this is an experience many people had. Many people were staying home, maybe exercising, moving around less, stress eating more, right? And so some of our clothes didn't necessarily fit as well. So they needed to be made bigger in order for us to continue wearing them. I've got another page here of notes about phrasal verbs with let. We'll discuss the next one, let through. This is going to be a little similar to let by. So we're allowing someone to pass by or pass through an area or a particular crowd. An example of this might be let the medics through. So imagine someone is having a medical emergency, right? We've got a big crowd of people. We want the medical professionals, the people who are trained to help someone in an emergency like that, to be able to easily pass through or pass by the crowd. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is let up. This can have a few different meanings. One would be to allow someone to get up. So, an example of how you might hear this used, imagine some kids fighting. Maybe one child is sitting on another, and the one who's being sat on says, "Mom, he won't let me up. He won't allow me to get up or stand up." So, another simple future in the negative there. A second way we can use let up is to mean to stop something or to have something become less intense. An example of this. When is this rain going to let up? So here's another simple future, this time using be going to. We're we've could imagine we've had really strong heavy rain all day, and we want to know, when is it going to become less intense? The last phrasal verb we're going to discuss today is to let up on. This can have a couple different meanings. One might be to apply less force to something. An example of this: don't let up on the brake pedal if your car has an anti-lock braking system. So there's different types of braking systems in cars. More modern ones are going to have this ABS or anti-lock braking system. And so you might have different pieces of advice as to how to get a car to stop really quickly. So here, the piece of advice is again another negative imperative, right? So don't apply less force. Keep strong pressure on the brake. A second way we can use let up on is to mean to become more lenient or maybe less forceful with someone. An example of this: this team isn't going to let up on us in the second half. We have to continue to play hard. So this is another be going to simple future here. You can imagine a coach saying this to their athletes or to their team, trying to kind of pump them up, right? So don't become less forceful. Don't, in this case, or I should say, the coach really wants the team to continue playing hard, right? So maybe that isn't a perfect fit with that more lenient, but don't allow them to have an easy time, right? That's kind of what is meant by that. Now, when I think of let, I think of so many related phrases. So that's what we're going to focus on next. The first related phrase you might hear with let is let someone know. This really just means we're informing someone of something. So you might hear that something like this: if you decide to go, let me know. Okay, so you're generally going to hear or see an object pronoun between let and know. And somebody's just asking you to inform or share information. Another related phrase would be to let oneself go. Many times when this is used, it means someone isn't really keeping up their physical appearance. So an example of this might be, did you see her at the reunion? Boy, she's really let herself go. Or boy, she's let herself go. So here, right, maybe they're just not making an effort to look as nice as uh, the same way that they might have in the past. As I'm describing this, again, I think of the pandemic, and there was so much going on. It was hard to work from home, and many children at home also trying to learn. It was really tough on parents. And so some people let themselves go, right? They didn't get haircuts. Maybe they weren't taking showers as often, but they were just trying to survive. A third phrase you might hear is to either let something fly or let someone have it. I've grouped these together because they have similar meanings, and that is connected to either verbally attacking or physically attacking someone. So, an example of let fly might be, the athlete let fly a string of expletives when he was ejected from the game. So, um, perhaps a player did something so bad that the referee or umpire, whatever the sport might be, said, "That's it, you're out," right? And then that person started to verbally attack the ref or the ump here. Expletives would be curse words. Second example, his parents really let him have it when he showed up an hour past curfew, right? So we might envision parents yelling at their teenager, "Why were you late? This is irresponsible. We're not going to let you go out again." So there's another usage of let. We're not going to let you go out. We're not going to allow. Last phrase we'll discuss. Again, I've grouped them together because their meanings are similar, so you might hear the phrase, "let's be honest," or "let's face it." Both of these connect to this idea of we need to be realistic, okay? And we need to be realistic dealing with maybe an unpleasant or unwelcome fact or situation. So, um, an example, you might hear, "let's be honest." You're talking with your teacher. "That was the worst paper I've ever written." Right? So I'm not going to pretend that this was okay, right? We need to be realistic. I could take that same sentence and just say, "let's face it, that was the worst paper I've ever written." Right? So anytime we kind of want to own something isn't perfect, it is maybe a bit uncomfortable or it's a bit unwelcome, but we've decided we're going to be realistic. We're not going to pretend that everything is okay or that everything is fine. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you'll tune in for tomorrow's verb. Have a great day.